Welcome to the Buy Box Bandits podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Buy Box Bandits podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. We have Eric from Amazon Lit with us here, who does multi 8 figures a year wholesale, working on getting to 9 figures, as I'm sure we'll talk about and everything like that. So really excited to have you here, man. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. Grateful for the opportunity. Appreciate that.
All right, cool. So we see the big Amazon screenshots, the multi-million-dollar months and all that stuff. Take us back to the beginning and how Amazon Lit went ahead and actually got started.
Yeah, so the year was 2013, which feels like a lifetime ago. Sebastian, my business partner and also best friend, he heard through the grapevine, just like his aunt knew somebody who was selling on Amazon. And turns out that after a year, they both quit their jobs. And Sebastian heard this. He was like, this is crazy. Like, I got to give this a shot. And so about December 2013, he bought his first couple products. And I walked into his basement and I saw the inventory. And I literally laughed at him. You know, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm selling products on Amazon. And at the time, there was no podcasts about Amazon or YouTube channels, Instagram. So like I literally thought it was a joke, you know, and then a bunch of long work weeks later and long nights and early mornings, you know, here we are. And there's obviously a lot in between there, you know.
Cool.
But we initially, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, all wholesale, right? Or at least back then it was arbitrage and now primarily wholesale.
Yeah. We got started the same way most people get started today. You know, we started with retail arbitrage, going into big box stores at the time, like Costco's, BJ's, Sam's Club. And literally there was no softwares. We were going in there with pieces of paper, writing UPCs and prices down. And then we would go back to our warehouse, research them, go back to the store, buy all the products, go back to the warehouse, list them, sell them, and do the same thing every day. For about 18 months, we did that. And that retail arbitrage experience allowed us to grow to about $1.5 million in sales. And we saw the opportunity, but we knew there had to be a better way. And that's kind of where the wholesale thing came into play.
And so as you started to transition into that wholesale, what sort of tangible steps did you execute on? Did you just pick up the phone and start calling random wholesalers, or?
No, it happened just like this. Sebastian got an email one day about a trade show in San Francisco. And, you know, he never went to a trade show. I never went to a trade show. And he just said, you know what, I'm going to go. He booked the flight, went out there, and he ended up meeting with some distributors he opened some accounts with. And we started placing larger volume orders. And just kind of the light bulb went off. We're like, wow, we used to go to the store and spend 8 hours to buy 500 units. And now in 2 hours, I just placed an order for 5,000 units. And we're like, this is the move. So we made the transition. It didn't happen overnight. As a lot of you know, it took time, about 18 months to go fully from RA 100% to 100% wholesale.
And during that 18 months, were you just reinvesting everything into the business, or?
Yeah. We didn't, you know, at the time we were just taking enough money out to put gas in the car, keep the lights on, put some food on the table. You know, I wasn't going to buy no fancy cars. I wasn't buying new jewelry. Like I was just Sebastian and myself were just putting everything right back.
Yeah. So that's a question I get all the time, is how long should I wait to take money out of the business? And my answer is the same every single time, right? As long as possible and everything like that. And on the scaling journey, right? You guys said it was arbitrage up to like 1.5 million and all that. At what point did you know you could take it to 8 figures and beyond? Like at what point did you really see the scalability in terms of all of it?
Yeah, it was probably that first year doing wholesale, because that first year, so in that first 18 months of retail arbitrage, we accumulated about 1.5 million in gross sales, right? And then that first year in wholesale, we nearly tripled that to 4.5 million. So it's like right when we saw that growth in such a short period of time, we're like, listen, we're all in. Like wholesale's the move.
Gotcha. Yeah. And when did employees start coming to things?
Yeah, so we hired our first employee was right after we moved into our first warehouse. So probably 9 months into the game. In the early on, Sebastian, his girlfriend at the time, was helping him label products. I would come through to his house and help him label products. His aunt, his uncle. We were just leveraging family. which is great. And I think a lot of people should leverage family as well.
I think that's a big point of confusion though, as people grow and start to develop that sale base, that when to start onboarding people to prep, what to source, what to outsource in the beginning, and how to start to transition that process.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be very confusing and almost daunting, So the way I like to look at it is, initially when you're building a business, and especially if you're doing an FBA business opposed to FBM, your most tedious task is going to be labeling inventory, packaging it, labeling it. So what I suggest to anybody who's looking to hire employees, like, analyze your day for the next 2 to 3 weeks, write down everything, and then whatever the highest amount of time you're spending on a task, if it can be outsourced or insourced for an in-house employee, then absolutely you want to get that in-house employee, because it's like your value of time. I know my time is worth much more than $15 an hour. It's probably 20 to 30 times more than that. So like, I'm going to pay an employee $15 an hour, and I could be using my skills and my brain to grow the business instead of operating the business.
Absolutely. Right. And like, in terms of that conversation around like high ROI, low ROI time, and all this, something we heard you say in Miami back in August. I'm curious because when I think about Amazon, the highest ROI stuff is always sourcing. It's buying products, which for wholesale is opening accounts and all that. At what point did you guys start bringing on buyers and stuff like that? Because I feel like that's really one of the keys to really grow the way you guys have, just from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. So myself and Sebastian, we did all the buying for about the first 2.5 years. Our first buyer, his name's Mac. Mac is still with us today, 6 years later. He was a college student, and Sebastian and I just saw the amount of time that goes into product research. It's a full-time position, especially when you're growing and, you go from a low 5 figures a month to high 5 figures a month, then to 6 figures a month. You always have to be buying inventory, or your business will stop grossing the type of sales that you want to see. So it's like right around 2.5 years, we're like, you know what? We're spending a lot of time doing this. Maybe we could bring someone in and train them based on what we've learned in the past 2.5 years, and pass off some of that task to somebody else. And then we started with 1, and then 1 became 2, and 2 became 3, and 3 became 4. And now I really don't do much buying anymore. Other than a few counts I manage, more direct, brand direct accounts. But other than that, I don't do much purchasing.
From a technical perspective, as your business has grown, has your strategy in terms of looking for wholesalers changed at all? Have you been,
Yeah, absolutely. We get a little more creative now. I think one of the biggest assets is attending in-person events and trade shows, because you never know who you're going to bump into. I've met some of the most successful people, and just at a quick glance, they're wearing flip-flops and shorts with holes in them, and you would never know they're that successful, but they're at this event. So you strike up a conversation, and then you find out like, oh, they own this business or that business. And also you get different techniques throughout the years. So one of the techniques I'd love to share with all of you is going to Indeed or monster.com and looking for like warehouse positions, because a lot of these huge national distributors and massive international distributors, they don't have websites. They were started in the late 30s, maybe the 50s. So they're owned by an older generation. They're not doing SEO. They don't really care. They're set up. They have their businesses. But when you start looking for warehouse positions, then you dig a little deeper and you start finding these companies that don't advertise, but they're looking for employees to work at their warehouse.
That is a piece of advice I have never heard anyone give. That's brilliant.
Yeah. What are some other creative strategies you use to find wholesale accounts? I definitely like the trade shows, because I know you guys do even at this point events, with students and all that at trade shows. But talk to us about some other wholesale sourcing methods.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of you probably drive by trucks every single day right on the road, and you don't even realize it. So I would encourage you. I always have my phone, and we have a group chat with our like management team. And if one of us is driving and we see a logo that we've never seen or a company we've never seen, we just snap a quick picture. And then, after a week or two, there'll be 8 or 10 pictures in there. And then someone sits down and starts emailing these companies and like, hey, I saw your truck and I'm interested in opening a wholesale account. I'm local. I looked, you guys are actually right up the street, because if it's a truck driving by, the chances that it's local are higher than,
Yeah.
not. So it's a huge opportunity there. And then Google searches, reverse ASIN searching, and then something as simple as, let me grab a product real quick, but something as simple as just like taking the product and looking who the manufacturer is on the actual product and just calling the manufacturer and saying, hey, what companies do you distribute to?
And what's some strategies that you use on the phone to win that account, right? Starting off, a lot of people might not have the confidence or the verbiage that, that a supplier would, take seriously. So what are some strategies that someone just making those first 5-10 calls can use in hopes to win over that account?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always try to bring value to these companies, right? So initially, a lot of times they're going to tell you no, so it's like, I don't just, okay, hang up the phone. I always inquire, why? Are you working with other third-party sellers? Because if that's the case, then there's an opportunity to jump in later down the line. Have you had a poor experience with third-party sellers? Are you selling on Amazon listings yourself, or are you exclusive with one Amazon seller opposed to a few Amazon sellers? So gaining this information allows you to document it and then follow up 30, 60, 90 days later, because we've had companies that it's taken us 2-3 years to even open an account with. They just kept saying no, 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 no. But the persistence and the consistency really allows you to open those doors down the road.
So do you guys keep like a CRM or, and obviously like in-house, a list of, people follow-ups and all that? Because that's something I'm sure very few people do. They hear no Amazon sellers. All right, they hang it up. Wholesale wasn't really for me or something. Knowing because I did that a few years ago and all that. But let's talk through, the follow-up process and how you keep a list of different stuff like that.
Yeah. So we documented it all in Google Sheets, so our entire team has access to it. And it's very straightforward, right? We could use a CRM to manage it, but the information is just literally their website, phone number, address, and then the last time they were contacted, right? And then we color code it. So like anything in red, we know like they've said no for multiple years and the chances of opening is very slim. Yellow is like, okay, let's follow up with them. And then green is like, all right, this company's a go. Maybe they said no last week, but they said follow up next month, or they already gave us the catalog and we're ready to place an order with them. So it's color coded, organized, and then we're following up with these companies every 30 days. And I don't care if they hang up the phone with me. I'm going to call them again 30 days later because they might have just been in a poor mood or had a bad day or got in a fight with a family member. You never know what's going on with somebody else.
Yeah, so I know in our business, some of the accounts that we win off the bat, we receive that pricing structure and it might not necessarily fit our business model at that time. Is that something where, you place a couple orders at break even in hopes that down the line you get further discounts, or are you negotiating off the bat, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm really not a supporter of placing break even or lost orders. It's definitely an option if there's nothing else you can do, or if you've had a conversation with the company and they're like, hey, once you place this first order, then you get a 10% discount. If that conversation's had, then absolutely we'll place that order at a loss or a minimal or a break even profit. But essentially, it's like if the prices don't make sense, I'm instantly requesting some sort of discount. If there's absolutely not one product I could buy from the catalog, then the only way to buy anything is to request a discount. So of course I'm going to request a discount. But a lot of times I think what people fail to realize is that they get too profit hungry instead of just being like, you know what, let me take an 8% margin for the next 3 or 4 orders, build the relationship, and then I'll get a bigger discount and I'll be able to get those 16, 20% margins.
Sweet. Okay. And I'm curious, in a 2022 wholesale climate, whether you're more a fan of brand direct or distributor for people looking to get into wholesale.
Yeah, I'm definitely more a fan of distributors and wholesalers over brand direct. Brand direct's a little more challenging to secure the deal. It's also lesser volume because you're going to be having a brand that maybe only has 5 or 6 SKUs, opposed to connecting with a wholesaler. They'll have thousands of brands with tens of thousands of SKUs.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You brought up margin. Has your margin overall for your business changed as you've continued to grow? And the margin that you're looking for specifically changed over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially we operated our business first 3 years at right around a 12% margin, 12 to 15% gross margin, so net on that was maybe 6-7%. But at the time, it was like we were more focused on building a profitable business. Right around year 3, we really started hammering in on our metrics and figuring out how we can increase our profit margins. And in that 3rd year into the 4th year, we were able to increase our profit margins by 8 points. So it went up from 12% to 20%, right? And at that point, our profits nearly doubled. We saw a 75% increase. We're like, this is crazy. And we started training our team to be a little more mindful of Keepa charts and competitive sellers and missed opportunities through multi-packs and bundles and listings that aren't connected to the UPC. That's a huge opportunity as well. So now our minimum profit that we will take to purchase a product is 10% gross profit margin. That's our minimum cutoff, but there's always exceptions to the rule based on volume.
Yeah, because that's a conversation Garrett and I have a lot, because we deal with a lot of people that are doing like 5 figures arbitrage where we were, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and all that are then trying to get to 6 figures. And our typical advice is just stop hunting just for 20% net and take 16 and take 14 more, because you'll be able to spend more. And then as you go, the flywheel kicks in of you make more, so you source more, so you make more, you enjoy it more, you source more, and all that, which really see some a lot of growth in that case. Definitely. In terms of tools you recommend for wholesalers, what are some of the different softwares, like scanning through price lists? What should our listeners looking to get into wholesale be using for that?
Yeah, so 3 main tools that you need for wholesale. First one's Keepa. It's a must. Analyzes the price changes and fluctuations in rank on an Amazon listing. Second one is AZ Insight. It's a profit calculator, lets you know if it's hazmat, oversized, any restrictions, if it's meltable. It gives you the dimensions, as well as it has the UPC and the weight. It just provides a lot of information right there on the page. It also includes small and light calculations. So it's really exceptional. And then as far as scraping UPC catalogs, right now we're using our own in-house software, but the software that we recommend people to use is Scan Unlimited. But I say that to say this: we will be releasing our software in the next couple months to the Amazon community.
Awesome. Yeah. So transitioning more into the content side of stuff for now, right on leaving off on the software point and everything, is when did the Amazon lit content brand that has now become an empire come into play?
Yeah, so August 2018, Sebastian and I were sitting upstairs in our office, and it was late on a Friday night. Me and Sebastian were always here super late. It was maybe 1 a.m. He screams through the wall, "Eric, you got to see this." And I see an ad. I'm not going to say who the guy was, but I see an ad for an Amazon course. It was like teaching people private label, and that was the first time I've ever saw an Amazon ad. So it like really blew me away. I was very surprised by it. And Sebastian and I were like, let's buy it right now. So we purchased it. It was $3,000. And within the first 5 minutes of watching it, we found like 3 or 4 mistakes and then we're like, what is this guy even talking about? Like this is so inaccurate. I don't even know how he's charging people for this. So at that point, we literally decided that we were going to build the world's best Amazon program. And that's exactly what we did.
Sweet. And I know you're a Russell Brunson guy, and one of his first things I think he said in .com Secrets, which I've read a few times, is look at what your competitors are doing, and that is so relatable for storefront stalking on Amazon. Funnel hack in this case. Look at where your competitors are moving, and has that been something that's been helpful for you guys over the years?
As far as our Amazon business, no, I don't really try to, I think it's a time suck. Really, I think for newer sellers, it's definitely the move because it teaches you a lot about the marketplace and what's selling, what's not selling, what has good ranks, what brands are moving. But for someone our size, it's just too tedious to be looking at other sellers' storefront. But I do that a lot with competitors in the Amazon consulting space. I bought pretty much every product program that exists, spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars because I want to make sure I have the best program out there.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm curious what your thoughts on some of the biggest mistakes people go making the transition from arbitrage to wholesale when they're initially trying to make it over however many months or weeks.
Yeah, so they either do it too quickly or too slowly, right? There's a pace that it should be done at. If you're doing mid five figures to high five figures a month, the transition from an RA 100% business model to a wholesale business model will probably take you 12 to 18 months to make that transition, because you need to keep bringing revenue in from the RA while growing wholesale accounts. So it's like this balance and this juggle that needs to happen. But if it happens smoothly, it can really escalate the growth of your company. And then the other thing is people just give up too quickly. Something happens, they make a mistake, a poor purchase order, an IP complaint, they lose a couple $1,000 and they're like, this isn't for me, instead of pushing forward. Because that's what makes successful people, is the ability to move forward when most people quit.
Yeah. Most of the people we talk to on the daily basis have, been in the game for 2, 3, 4 years. Obviously, you've been in a bit longer. What's sort of the differences in the marketplace as opposed to when you started, when you guys were building it up, as opposed to now when it's, not sort of commonplace to talk about Amazon, selling on Amazon, but it's definitely more mainstream than it was.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest differences that I see is the competition on the listings. As far as you get a lot of listings. I'm sure a lot of you have seen them, where you'll have 40 retail arbitrage sellers on them. Like when I started selling, that just wasn't the case. There wasn't 50 sellers on a listing and they all had 10 or less units. So it kind of creates this like atmosphere. But I think now what the benefit is there's more Prime customers than ever. Nearly half of the United States has an Amazon Prime account, 150,000 users. So like, I really think it's not much different than it was in 2013, because there was less sellers, but there was also less customers. Now there's more sellers, but there's also more customers, as well as more Amazon listings. So I feel like the balance is kind of weighed out. But the one thing I'd like to point out is what I always like to review is the top 100 Amazon sellers. That's what I like to look at in the United States, because I want to know what my competition's doing. And I find, after analyzing this list for the past 5 years, that the top sellers 3-4 years ago are no longer the top sellers. They stopped growing, right? They failed to prevail and make it out. And that's not something I'm willing to do. So I'm always trying to initiate and innovate so we can make progress in our company.
Gotcha. And on the topic of innovating, I'm curious how you guys pivoted when the major world event happened 2 years ago and FBA was shut down for non-essential items, because I'm sure you guys had a lot of purchase orders of stuff that probably couldn't be sent in. I'm just curious what pivot went down when that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So that pivot literally changed my life and the course of our company. We had access to a bunch of distributors at the time who had all those essential products. So literally it was same thing, maybe a Thursday or Friday night, 2 a.m. Sebastian and I were yelling through the wall, I'm about to buy $50,000 worth of toilet paper. And I'm like, I'm getting $80,000 worth of soap. And we're just screaming. We couldn't even believe it. And we got these orders into our warehouse, and they were the toilet paper, the $50,000 of toilet paper sold out in 2 days. We couldn't even believe it. And it was just like such an opportunity there. So while most people, they didn't potentially have the relationships or the opportunities, we were in a fortunate enough situation because of the 6 years of previous hard work that we put in, that it just kind of worked out.
Mm-hmm. And I really like the way you're thinking long-term on all this stuff. And I'm curious your thoughts on the future of Amazon, FBA, wholesale, and all that stuff, like 3 to 5 years out, because I'm only a few years into this. And I've obviously at this point, devoted my life to it in the same way we all have. And I'm just in some points nervous, but then I'm thinking like Bezos is buying all these warehouses and he obviously knows stuff that I don't know and everything like that. So I'm curious on how you think the industry is going to change over the next few years.
Yeah. So I honestly think that the wholesale business model is not going anywhere. It's going to exist for the next couple decades at a bare minimum, because at the end of the day, people always need brand name products, and Amazon is too large to do the work that us third-party sellers are doing, like the multi-packs and the bundles. They're just not going to do that. It's not going to drive the profits that they're looking for. They're more in the software service, the cloud services, and then growing Amazon. So they're not looking to bundle items. Also, I think in the next 2 to 4 years, we're going to see a shift with more brands partnering with third-party sellers, because they understand that Amazon is the place to be. I just had a phone call yesterday with a company, and they're trying to get their products into Walmart and some of these big brick and mortar stores. And the first question they asked these stores, or the first question the stores asked these companies was, what are your Amazon sales? And they said, we don't have Amazon sales. So that's why they called us, because they're like, Eric, we need to be on Amazon because these brick and mortar stores are actually looking for that. So I think the shift is going to happen with more brand direct relationships and more exclusive sellers on those listings.
That's interesting. Take us through the day-to-day of Eric, part owner of Amazon Lit. What goes into each of one of your days? And obviously, I'm sure it's pretty maxed out. What's your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so my day-to-day is always very, very different. I think it would be best to just start with like what a normal day would look like if I was here all day, right? Because a lot of times I'm running around. Today I'm moving. I went to go look at houses and apartments. So like the beautiful thing about being a business owner is you don't have to be here all day. But a typical day, first thing I do when I get into the office in the morning is I open up Seller Central and I pop up my orders tab. Right. And I'm going through the first 2 pages. So I change it to 100 orders per tab. And I'm looking at the first 2 pages, which is about the last couple hours of orders. And I'm only looking for outliers. So, and I encourage all of you to do this. So if you see a product that you sold, 15 of in the last, on that first page, it's like, that's an indicator that you could probably go in there and increase your price because somebody sold out. Or something happened in the landscape of that listing where now all of a sudden you're selling a lot of it. So I instantly go in and we probably make an extra, $10,000, $30,000 a month just by raising these prices a little bit here, a little bit there, just from managing these orders. And also I want to understand as a business owner, what products are selling, what I need to look out for, what trends are happening. So the great way to do that is looking at your orders. Second thing I really dive into is our repricing. I'm just looking for any outliers in our repricer. I'm analyzing our daily profits from the day before. If our daily profit isn't over $22,000, $23,000, then there's an issue there. And I'm looking into like, why is that happening? So like diving into that. I also do a lot of training with our buyers. So we just hired 2 new buyers. So I'm literally training them through the process. The first part of the process is putting them through our eSellers RI course. We don't hire anybody until they go through that. And then the second step is putting them on their own to place some orders. And then I literally review those orders for the first month to make sure that they're par and ready to be thrown into the gauntlet, And then the rest of the day, I like to explore downstairs a little bit, just make sure that like right here, you can see behind me, we got all these pallets. We recently implemented a system here where now we have the data was received, what pallet it's on, the location. And so I'm just making sure that the people who are building these systems are staying on top of these systems and continuing to innovate, not only in our warehouse, but also with our buying team, as well as web development.
Sweet. And one quick question, in terms of buying forecasting, how do you go about doing it? Is it more formulaic, or do you just train your buyers to kind of get the vibe on different products and how deep you would want to go, the horizon of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So first thing they're looking at as far as forecasting is purchasing for 30 days. We prefer to purchase inventory for 30 days because Amazon's very volatile. And then the second thing they're looking at is competition, because like if the rank checks out and the profit checks out, you got to look at how many competitive sellers, not just sellers, but competitive sellers, buy box competitive sellers you're competing with. And then also their inventory levels. Because if a listing's selling 500 units a month and the guy who has the buy box has 5,000, he's got 10 months of inventory. That's not a listing I'm willing to get on. So if the profit makes sense, the BSR makes sense, the competition makes sense, the Keepa chart looks good, we're buying that product.
In terms of Keepa specifically, how much data are you using in terms of historical tracking? And then how futuristically are you looking? Are you looking to purchase a product 4 months in advance, 6 months, or are you cool with sometimes just one-off products here and there?
Yeah. So the first thing, and I suggest everybody does this in the settings on Keepa, you could change it from 3-month window to a 1-year window. These FBA fee increases with the 5% surcharge, and then gas increases. Like these landscapes of these Keepa charts are crazy with pricing, up and down, up and down. So I always want to look at the full year. when I'm analyzing these Keepa charts. I also like to check out the buy box statistics to see who's winning the buy box. I like to look at the variation and the review count to see what variation is actually getting most of those reviews. So I kind of can gauge which variation I'm going to purchase. So I'm making educated buying decisions.
Fantastic. And in terms of scaling up as quick as you guys did, I know it took a lot of hard work, and I know it also took a lot of capital. And I'm curious if you guys use any outside funding sources, I'm sure credit along the way and all that, because I know that's an integral cog in scaling quickly. So I'm curious what all you guys
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. I'll give you the formula for our success path. We first 2-3 years leveraged a ton of credit cards. You know, I think it's the MasterCard, it's the Plum card. I believe it's MasterCard Plum. They have a 60-day grace period instead of 30 days. So that's huge for Amazon. So we leveraged a lot of credit cards. We started opening net term accounts. So a net term account is essentially a vendor ships you items and you don't have to pay for it for 14, 30, 45, 60 days, which is huge. It's like free money. And then we started doing Amazon lending. That was the third thing we did. We got initially it's like a $20,000 lending offer, and then it was 50, then it was 100. And by the time we stopped using them, we were taking $1 million lending offer 2 or 3 times a year from Amazon. So, and the most recent thing we did was we took an SBA loan, which is a business loan backed by the government with a very high line of credit. Just keep in mind, if you do go the SBA route, you have to put some sort of collateral up, whether it's a rental property or a home you own. You have to put something so the bank has protection for themselves. But that was our journey. Credit cards, net terms, which we still use today, Amazon lending, SBA loan.
For the Buy Box Bandit listener that wants to get into wholesale, obviously a lot of our listeners are probably still in arbitrage, at least online arbitrage. Are there specific categories that they should be focusing on off the bat, or is it just kind of a free reign on whatever account they can get?
Yeah, so it really depends on the specific seller and what they're approved to sell, you know, because if you're approved in grocery, you're going to have a lot more opportunity than a seller who's not approved in grocery. So I would say the categories you're approved in or the brands you're approved in, start reaching out to distributors that carry those products. And then the beautiful thing about wholesale is it's so easy to get approved for new categories and brands, because all you need is an invoice with a minimum of 10 items on it from a reputable distributor, and Amazon opens up a whole new category for you. The main categories we sell in are grocery and personal care.
Mm-hmm. And I'd assume probably because there's a lot of replenishability and price stability year round on those types of items.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so about 60% of our inventory is not replenishable, you know, but that's still a fair share amount of SKUs that are consistent.
I did not expect you to. So you guys are buying heavy then new SKUs all the time, I would assume.
Yeah. Cool. Like I was just in our repricing software right before this podcast, and I had 82 new products getting sent just on this one shipment today. In one day, 82 new ASINs we're sending into Amazon.
So do you have someone full time that just is checking like the specific, or at least, I mean, I'm sure you're dealing with probably tens of thousands of ASINs. So how do you manage all those from a repricing perspective?
Yeah, so we have a repricing specialist. Her name's Lily. She's amazing. She's actually on a cruise right now in Colombia. I'm so excited for her. But she managed our repricing, and what she did was she built out a team of VAs. She works with 3 VAs who support her. So they're doing more of the monotonous, you know, inputting numbers, and then she's just checking their information, or if they have questions, she's solving those problems for them.
I cannot believe you deal with stuff, or a majority of stuff that's not replenishable. That's really cool stuff. And you guys clearly, you know, it's worked and everything like that. Yeah. And that might be something I need to look into a lot more often then. Definitely.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's 60-40. So that 40% of replenishable is absolutely helpful. You know, that's 20+ million a year in SKUs that just sell consistently. You know?
Yeah. I mean, the repricing specialist, like that, like breaks my brain thinking of an Amazon business having a repricing specialist. In terms of Q4, how much does Q4 differ for you guys, both catalog wise and sales wise, compared to the rest of the year?
Yeah, so Q4, we usually see about a 15 to 20% increase in sales revenue, as well as a 15 to 20% increase in profit. The thing about Q4, you get a lot of great holidays in there. You got Halloween, really it starts right before Q4. You got back to school, you got Halloween, you got Thanksgiving, and then you got Christmas and Hanukkah and any other holiday that falls at the end of December there. So what we're doing is we're literally a lot of times using last year's sales data and purchasing some of these holiday products 3 to 5 months in advance, because these distributors send out what they call like promotional catalogs or holiday specials. They send them out in August or even June or July sometimes. And it's like, if you're not buying them, you're going to miss out on the opportunity.
Gotcha. And do you guys do any merchant fulfilled, like heavy during Q4 in December once the FBA cutoff date comes?
Actually, so we have completely nixed merchant fulfilled from our business for about 2 years now. We did merchant fulfilled for the first 7 or 8 years, especially those non-essential items. We did a lot of merchant fulfilled, but in the past year and a half, we realized the amount of money we're making with Amazon FBA, it's just merchant fulfilled for our business model just does not make sense.
Cool.
Is there any PL portion of your business right now, or do you have any plans to get into it moving forward?
Yeah. So we own 4 private label brands. One's in a baby category, another's in home and kitchen, and then 2 others. I think one's grocery. I can't remember the third. But absolutely, we're also building brands while we're selling these wholesale products.
Because I'm sure you are, and I'm kind of switching things up. Are you guys doing any PPC on specific wholesale listings?
Yeah, so I like to call it the non-competitive campaign or the excess inventory campaign. So if a SKU is just not moving the way I'd like it to, or let's say it's slowed down, BSR jumped up and I got 3 months of inventory, I'll absolutely throw a low bid, high budget campaign at that just to generate more sales.
But it doesn't sound like that's kind of a hallmark of a lot of your guys' wholesale stuff then.
No, we definitely don't do it across the board. I know sellers do it across the board. I feel like a lot of our wholesale products sell anyway. So like, even if I'm spending 3 cents an item, but I'm shipping 300,000 items a month. Like, when you think about the growth, like these little penny here, penny there, it adds up,
Yeah, and that's another thing I'm curious about. Are you more a fan of the quick nickels or the slow dimes in terms of
quick nickel?
All day.
I'll take a quick nickel over a slow dime all day.
Sweet.
As we start to wrap up here, something you have been instituting with your content is the NFT space.
Yeah.
What's sort of your 2 cents on where things are now and where they will be going moving forward?
Yeah, so I think, definitely in the years and decades to come, NFTs are going to be the future of wealth, right? There's going to be a huge transition to what people are doing with their money, and a lot of that's going to NFTs. But I also think in the next couple of years, it's going to crash as well. The hype was super crazy. Everybody was home, and then all of a sudden these projects come out and people are dumping, tens, hundreds, thousands of dollars into these NFTs. And it's just crazy. And I know it's not going to last like this, but there are specific projects with great utility that will withstand the crash.
Yeah, you and I are both in on the book games for the season 2, man. I swiped up on your story there. Fantastic. Yeah, and so just before we finish up, for the people looking to get started with wholesale, what's like the action step checklist to get their first accounts open in the next few weeks?
Yeah. So first thing would be go to Google, research and document the information, contact, phone number of, let's say, 30 to 50 distributors, and then the next day you would literally sit down and send them all an email and call all of them, depending on which way they respond, and say, hey, my name's Eric. I'm interested in opening a wholesale account. Can you please send me over a catalog with description, case pack, price, and UPC? And then based on their response, you'll either get a catalog or you'll get a question, and then you could answer it, or they say, hey, can you call me? And then you do that. So the main goal is get as many catalogs as possible, because when you have a catalog, you have access to the product, opposed to like finding a product and then trying to reverse engineer where to buy it from. I always like to just get the products and then pull from the products I have access to. So I think really that's the name of the game, get the catalogs, find what you have, start researching the products, and then start buying them and placing orders.
Do you guys have any data in terms of I reach out to X amount of, or I send X amount of emails, how many theoretically should I expect to get the catalog for or win the account with?
Yeah, absolutely. So our open account rate is about 10 to 12%. So for every 100 distributors we reach out to, we'll probably only open, this is for like newer sellers, right? Because we're so large, we could send our storefront and people open accounts. But for newer sellers, you're going to have 10 to 12% open rate and about a 5% close rate. So if you open 100 account or you reach out to 100 distributors, you might only open accounts with 12 of them, and you'll probably only place orders with 5 of them.
Sweet. All right. Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, and we, have been lucky enough to see you speak in Miami and all that. So thanks a lot for giving all the Buy Box listeners some game on all that. And they should all your info will be below. Amazon, let you guys check them out, Instagram, YouTube, and all that. And we really appreciate it. And thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate your time, fellas.